Hello, you are here with SlenderDan and with Phoenix for our comic book series, the Chillin Villains comic book reviews. We are going to be reviewing Borderlands Origins, the very first comic, written by Mikey Newman and art by Agustin Padilla. So, Phoenix, where do you want to start off with this comic?
What it's basically about, and the art style, how good it is, etc., etc.
Okay. Basically, it looks like it takes place before all of the Borderlands games.
Hence Origins.
Definitely. The art looks very different from the game, I must say. Way different.
Very different?
And
That's...
I would
similar,
say...
but it's definitely not the same. It's not the same style you see in the game. But there's definitely a similar feel to it.
It's interesting, though, because it looks a little bit darker. Like, I'm sure if the game could look like this, they don't have it. The graphics aren't good enough and stuff to actually look like this comic yet, I don't think. But anyway, it basically revolves around Roland, who you see throughout Borderlands 1, the game, and quite a bit through Borderlands 2, but I'm sure we don't want to get into that because that would be a game review.
Yeah, I'm not doing game reviews.
So basically, Phoenix, why don't you give us a short synopsis of what happens before we give any spoilers out on the end, for basically the people who just want a review of the comic itself.
The best way I can imagine to describe it is, you've played Borderlands, you get on the bus at the very beginning of the game, and you encounter the 4 different heroes. This is the story of how Roland got to the bus. Basically.
Okay, so basically, if you want to hear the spoiler, skip to the end of this video. Phoenix, what did you think overall of the comic book?
I thought it was good. It was solid standalone. It's definitely a nice little addition if you're a fan of the Borderlands series.
Definitely.
If you're a big fan of Borderlands, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I know people that would want to scoop up anything Borderlands related, so... So out of a 10 ratio, what would you give the comic book overall for art, story, everything?
For a standalone story, the art's not bad. It's not overly remarkable.
Okay.
The story is decent enough. I mean, it was set to kind of wrap up in one book.
Right.
And if you're not into Borderlands, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you're into Borderlands, like I would imagine you are since you're watching this review, it's worth the read.
Okay.
I'd say if you're going to get this one, you're probably going to get the other ones too, which are equally as good.
Okay. So what is your final number on that ratio out of a 10?
To a non-Borderlands person, it's maybe a 4 or 5. To a Borderlands person, it's definitely readable, 7 or more.
I thought that the whole look, basically the artwork, was a lot linear than the normal Borderlands games, which I'm used to. I think that they couldn't decide if they were either going to go with the Borderlands art or if they were going to go with standard graphic novel or comic-looking artwork. I do agree with you that it was going to be wrapped up in this book or a couple of them, but for a person who hasn't played either Borderlands game and doesn't know the story, this isn't one of those comic books that you can just pick up and actually understand what's going on. If you haven't played the other games, odds are you're going to be very confused while reading this specific comic book. There's certain references in there and also people who will mean nothing of significance to you. That is my opinion. To a non-Borderlands person, I think it would just be a standard comic book which you would pick up, so I agree with Phoenix, it'd be like a 4, and then with people who's played Borderlands and everything, it's interesting to find about Roland's past, so I would say 7 or 8, because if they made it like the artwork of the Borderlands games, I would probably give it a full out 10. So I guess that wraps up our initial review of it, and now we're going to go into the spoilers and I guess discuss it.
Yes, the actual meat of it. So if you are here just for a review and are going to go buy it and read it and you don't want us to tell you what's going to happen, thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching. So,
to those of you that are still here.
Yeah, to the ones who stayed, they waited for the meat. Basically, I try to keep it as vague as possible. I have not reviewed comic books before, so this is where it comes in. But And the interesting thing is, in the game, actually can't remember if he was a sergeant or not. But anyway, in this comic book, in the beginning, he's a sergeant, and he's sitting there with his, I want to say, like, squad, and they're roasting something, and they're not sure if they have permission to actually do it. But then Roland has this attitude where he's just like, I can do whatever I want. So, I'm not going to get into the game, obviously, but in the game, his attitude is different in the game because he's grown up. They are just talking. He's going to go talk to somebody named Higgins, and basically it's like their commander. And it seems that he and Roland have an argument, and he says something to the effect like Higgins got stronger, and you can see that his sleeve has been rolled back and he has something attached to his arm. So obviously it gives him incredible strength, like an exoskeleton or something. So they talk, and there's a specific area that Higgins wants them to lay off of, and he talks about something called the Collapsed Valley. So they go there, and it looks like a massive hole in the ground. So basically, they're going, and they see the hole, and they see this little tiny creature, and it's the squad. It's Roland and his 3 people. Looks like
well,
he
you
has
ignored
a sniper.
page 1 in your previous synopsis.
Page 1?
Page 1.
Where Roland's holding the thing and reading the report. Yes.
Well, technically it's page 3, but yeah.
Okay. So anyway, they're there, and they see this little tiny creature, and they're like, oh, and then the sniper lady says that she's not going to shoot it. And what happens is these 2 massive rhino dogs come running in, and they look like they're as tall as 10-story buildings. And they basically get into an epic battle, which involves them killing the rhino creatures.
It's so epic, it lasts for 4 pages.
4 pages? Yeah, 4
pages.
It got 4 pages, guys. And then she ends up picking up the tiny baby rhino thing, and they obviously all know that it's going to turn into one of the massive ones, but she's thinking that maybe she can tame it, I'm guessing. And then they're like, and then she looks up and she's like, oh, what's everyone looking at? And then she gets shot straight in the head by the guy earlier that lifted up Roland. So that's a whole kind of plot twist right there. Higgins snipes her.
And then him and his goons proceed to pick off everyone of the team except for Roland, who's shot in the shoulder, and he's like, hey, I'm going to leave you here to die.
And you find out that Higgins has been extorting money, and he was going to try to pin it onto the team. Obviously, he's going to kill them, so it's a little bit of one movie. I can't think of what that one movie is, but the whole team basically gets the G.I. Joe movies, like the one where they all got pinned for something they didn't do. And then it shows 714 cycles later. And do you think that that's days, or what do you think that's what that is?
Days, months, weeks. It's probably cycles is sort of a generic term for how long that their day is on that planet, because each day would be different.
Yeah, I would say so. 714 cycles, though, is a long... I mean, if we were going to measure it in years, though, that would... I don't even know.
Could be any
but
amount
anyway,
of time, really.
Yeah,
anyway.
I actually am not sure what type of time Borderlands goes by. That's actually an interesting question. And he boards a bus, and he basically leaves, and it looks like there is a bloody tie left on the ground, and that is the final page. So, the question is there another comic book after this?
Absolutely. There's issue 2, which is about Lilith. Okay.
Oh, that will be fun.
Which is what I mean by if you read one and the story's over.
Right.
Each one is the story of each of the characters. So
that's interesting. So it doesn't give much information, but it gives a sort of type of background on when the characters were older, because obviously Roland looks very younger. He looks younger, and also he was a sergeant, which he no longer is in Borderlands 2. So... was there anything that you wanted to bring up that stood out to you in this comic book at all, or anything that clashes with the Borderlands games, Phoenix?
No. It adds some depth to the characters that were otherwise missing, as they end up being generic people who just shoot things with very little backstory.
That's true. That's basically what Borderlands is. Or at least the first Borderlands. Once you get into the second one, there's tons of background story on the characters from the first one, which is interesting because it gave them room to establish a story. But anyway, I still agree with my comment of the artwork looking linear, but overall I enjoyed the comic book quite a bit.
Yeah. As we're both Borderlands people, we have a little bit of bias toward it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Borderlands, to me, as a game and as artwork and books and everything, it really stands out instead of all of the other RPGs and first-person shooters, because its artwork is so unique.
Which I'm not sure if you're aware, but that was actually something they did very late in the process of making it.
So before the game was going to look like a normal shooter or something, basically?
It was supposed to look hyper-realistic, and then they pushed it back by like a month or two, and during that time they changed the entire art style to the current cell-shaded look.
Oh, I am so glad that they did that. If it was just another RPG, odds are it wouldn't have gone as well as it is.
Right.
I mean, people are, me included, are very much anticipating Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
So, unless you have anything to add, I think that includes our very first comic book review, and we get to do it on Borderlands, so that makes me really excited.
Borderlands Origins #1, The Book of Roland.
Yep. So, I'd recommend that you guys go get it if you want to read it. It's overall fun. So, that was the Chillin Villains comic book review of Borderlands Origin, and I hope you guys enjoyed this.